Hello and welcome to this new edition of In Conversation With. I'm TG Campbell, author of the Bow Street Society books, set in Victoria and London. The start of the series is A Case of Curious Client. The most recent book is The Case of the Fatal Flaw. Just to give a bit of context, the Bow Street Society is a group of amateur detectives with ordinary jobs who use their skills and knowledge from those ordinary jobs to then solve extraordinary crimes in Victoria and London. And today I am welcoming Richard A. Boxshall to the podcast or whatever you want to call this. Do you want to give yourself a little introduction, Richard?
Yeah, so hello, my name's Richard A. Boxshall. The A stands for Andrew. Richard A. Boxshall is a pseudonym. So my real name is Andrew, which is my middle name of my pseudonym. So if I accidentally get called Andrew at some point during the interview, that's why. I am a wannabe writer. So I'm working on my third project at the moment. One is complete. It's called The English Hikikomori, and it's about someone suffering with depression working up to suicide. So very cheerful. The second book I wrote is called Still Life. That is in a bit of an editing process, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. And the one that's kind of my current project is called Empress of the Trees, which is it's an ecological thriller in which the trees, basically rather upset with what we're doing to the planet, find a way of giving us an ultimatum, which boils down to sort it out, humanity, or we'll stop breathing for 2 years. We'll see if you won't. So yeah, I also do a mainly daily podcast, mainly to encourage me to sort of stay in the habit of writing. I'm quite active on social media, and in the real world, I have a fabulous job. I'm a flight attendant, so I get paid to go all over the world. So it's great fun.
Yeah, paid to go on holiday.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say when you're on the ground for 24 hours suffering with jet lag, it's exactly a holiday. But
yeah, I suppose, yeah. But so we met for a writers group, didn't we? For a local NaNoWriMo writers group. Also, you are one of my beta readers for the Bow Society books, and also for the intro music of this episode, you actually composed that as well. So thank you very much for doing that. That's a brilliant piece of music.
Oh, thank you. Well, it was a commission, wasn't it? It's the first time somebody's ever actually asked me to do anything. And the story of it is basically, I can't write music, I have to write songs. So in fact, what you used is the instrumental version of a song I wrote, because my brain does think in terms of verses and choruses and breaks and middle eights and stuff like that. But yes, I enjoy doing that, actually. I'm quite pleased with it as well.
Oh yeah, I'm chuffed little bits of it, yeah. So you mentioned in your introduction that you do a podcast, the host of the podcast, The Diary of a Wannabe Writer. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I initially started it on, let me just get my notes up, but I think it was the 22nd of April last year. And it was as a result of me being frustrated with myself that I was missing all deadlines that I'd set for myself in terms of writing. So I kind of thought, well, what if I do a podcast? I worked on the assumption that literally nobody would listen to it, if I'm honest. So it's actually quite nice that a few people are. But I literally decided to use it as a way of holding myself to account, so that if I said I will do something by this date, if I didn't, I'd have to come back on the podcast and say, oh, I didn't do that. And it worked absolute wonders. I mean, last year I was so much more productive after I started doing that. And this year, even more so. It's very short form. I aim for a minimum of 6 minutes. It can, if I'm blathering on, it can go up to 10. And I've done a couple of sort of special editions, bonus episodes over Christmas, which are deliberately longer, like I did a short story reading and just talking about music and other things I'm passionate about. But yeah, so I started it initially basically to hold myself accountable for not writing.
Yeah, I do listen to that. It's really funny when you're like, I haven't done any writing today, so now what am I going to talk about for the next 6 minutes? I'm sure I'll find something, and you talk about what you watched and what else you've been doing that day, or, the
emergency podcasts.
Yeah.
So when there was a point where I wasn't writing much, and occasionally, because I do occasionally suffer from mental health issues, and there were times, particularly last year, where I just wasn't in the mood to do a podcast. So what I did was, knowing this would probably happen, is I'd record 2 or 3 kind of episodes in advance that weren't about a particular topic, but it was something I could put out in the days when I was in the mood to put them out. And there was the format was usually random questions, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That the internet generated. And I'm proud to say I haven't done that at all this year. I've done 67 or 68, I think, was the podcast that went out this year, yesterday for this year. And I haven't done a single emergency podcast, which I think probably said something positive about my state of mind this year over last year, hopefully.
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah. So the next question is, what was your first ever writing project, and can I read it?
Right. Well, The thing that really got me into it was actually when I was at school, I got told I could write and that maybe I should. And being a kid, it felt like too much work, and I didn't bother to do anything with it. So of course, I waited until I was writing my dissertation at university
Of
to
course,
actually try and
optimum
write,
time.
because I am the ultimate procrastinator. On that occasion, I decided the best thing to do instead of writing um, my dissertation was to write a 3-volume massive fantasy epic. And I spent loads of time backgrounding it, creating the characters. I actually think the story is quite good still. I never finished it. I wrote I think about 100,000 words of it.
Totally, 100,000 words of it.
Well,
Well, compared to your current project, yeah,
given
it's
that was
quite a small.
planned to be the first third of the first book, it was going to be, well, it was supposed to be an epic fantasy. It was terribly written. I still have a copy. You can't read it.
Why not?
Because it's bloody awful. It's the Don't get me wrong, there are some bits that are quite so. There's one chapter where some characters are walking through a wood and they suddenly realize that it's literally shifting and moving around them
Yeah,
and they're lost. And I still read that and think, yeah, that works. But the majority of the characters are very two-dimensional. I put characters in specifically to address an issue rather than being
yeah,
a character in their own right.
yeah.
Uh, and it was the very first thing I attempted to write. I never finished it. It isn't very good. I've often thought that the idea behind it was sound and maybe I could revisit it. But whilst I like writing stuff that isn't quite in the real world, I don't think I'd ever now want to write a full-on sort of fantasy epic Tolkien-esque or
Yeah.
who has it, George R. R. Martin. That doesn't really appeal to me now. So I don't think it'll ever get done. And the first book that I properly wrote and actually finished, which I assume is what you were thinking of when you asked the question. It's a book called The English
Yeah.
Hikikomori. So in 2018, I decided that, I was aware of this thing called NaNoWriMo, which stands for National Novel Writing Month. I'd heard it on writing podcasts I listened to because I used to listen to a podcast by, and I can't remember her name. She's now a published author, but she wasn't when she started it. And it was called I Should Be Writing. And I used to listen to that regularly. And so she talked a lot about using NaNoWriMo as a starting point. So in 2018, I thought every year November comes and I kind of think about it, then don't do it. I'm going to do something this year. I'd saved up for a laptop, so I went into I think it was a MacBook. So I went into Apple. I bought my MacBook. I'd had this story about somebody working up to suicide in my head
Mm.
for quite a long time. I had a fairly good idea of the structure of it, that it was going to be told in 2 strands, a fake one followed by the real one. And then in 2018, I started writing it. I went along to my first NaNoWriMo meeting in Milton Keynes, which is where I met you.
Yeah.
And I haven't really stopped. There have been moments in the last, so I've been doing it, I would say, seriously for 6 years. There was a period of about 2 years in the middle where a lot happened. I
Mm.
had a family member who subsequently passed. That whole thing really affected my mental health. So I would say out of those 6 years, I've been writing properly for 4 of them, and I kind of lost the 2 in the middle because of everything else that's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, go on.
Did you have a moment where you'd got your MacBook, you sat down, you're like, right, I know my story, I know what I'm doing, you're like staring at the blank page, what do I write?
No, because I'd actually attempted to write this story before. I'd only written, I think, a couple of thousand words. So the first thing I did was and that was on a file on an old PC. So I emailed it across. And
Mm.
the first thing I did was read it and thought, this is utter garbage. I need to do not what's on here.
Highlight, delete.
Basically, or even use that as like the opposite of
Yeah,
what's the word I'm looking for? The opposite of inspiration.
yeah.
Um, and English Hiki,
Avoidance.
it's a very personal story. I was never suicidal, so it's not about me from that point of view. But a lot of the thought processes going through my character's head when he was having the mental health issues are absolutely real. So I took his story a lot further than thankfully mine went, but
Mm.
that's why I wrote it. And it was extremely cathartic writing it. I enjoyed writing it. I'm proud of the finished result. I wouldn't say it's the most accessible thing I've ever written, because what I tend to find is when people read it, female readers empathize and get it, and male readers just think, oh, do you want me to slit my wrists as well? Is the kind I've had back from it. So I do think it's I don't think men would enjoy reading it, but the feedback from women that have read it is a lot more positive.
Mm. So You say we talked about your epic fantasy, which never see the light of day. So since then, how do you think you've sort of grown and evolved as a writer since that point?
So there's a few things. So firstly, um, I now have a better instinct of what's working and what isn't. So you look at I will never show you the first draft of the English Hikikomori, for example, because there was a sex scene in there. And I just decided the best thing to do would be to write it in detail and graphically. It's it's cringingly embarrassing, just awful. And so one of the things I learned from that was less is more.
Oh yeah,
Um,
fade the black.
yeah, absolutely. And I think so. So, firstly, I've got a much better idea of what works now than I did then. And I think, whereas then I would have pressed through thinking I can sort this out in the edit. The second thing I've learned is that editing is or can be horrible.
Yep.
When I first wrote the English Hikikomori, I thought it'd be a good idea to turn it into a PDF and turn it into an actual book. I could edit that. And I literally started going through it, and there were so many mistakes on page one. I'm looking at it going, yeah, there's another 321 after this.
Yeah, I
Oh,
remember you bringing it into Waterstones. You'd be like, "Oh, I've just got this printed," and you sat there like,
yeah. It actually, it really put me off. But then that was the way NaNoWriMo encouraged you to write. Write the first draft, let it fall out of your head in whatever state it's in, and then edit it. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong, but if you hate editing as much as I do, it means that, so effectively, your second draft is just a tidy up. It's correcting spelling, grammar, character inconsistencies, and stuff like that. There's no joy in the second draft at all.
mm,
And
mm,
that nearly stopped me continuing.
yeah,
And I wrote Still Life, which is my second book that is nearly finished, in the same way, and yeah, had the same issues with the second draft. And I was writing the third one, Empress of the Trees, and I was talking to you in Waterstones, I expect.
mm.
And you said, well, have you considered writing and editing? And I did my normal male thing of, yeah, but I'm not, it's no, that's not for me. That'll
That's
never.
not the proper way to do it.
Yeah. And then I thought about it. And the problem was at that point, I had written 31 chapters and 200,000 words
Yeah,
of the trees.
you're
However,
quite a way into it, weren't you?
yeah,
Yeah,
but I hadn't looked at it for 2 years because when I started writing it, it was immediately before the pandemic. And then it's a story about the end of the world, basically.
yeah.
Suddenly in March 2020, I don't think it's fanciful to say that it felt like that was a possibility at the time. I don't think anybody genuinely believed the world was going to end, but it
You felt
felt,
like civilization could crumble, though. You did feel like at one point it was
yeah,
an unprecedented situation that none of us had ever
exactly.
gone through before. Yeah,
Exactly. And it really put me off the story. It made me think, no, this is too close to home. And I shelved it for a long time and only came back to it a couple of years ago. And on that occasion, I thought, well, I've got to reread the whole thing because I'm not close enough to it just to pick up the writing. And then I thought, well, if I'm reading it, why don't I edit it?
yeah,
And then when I get to writing new material, switch to a write edit model. So, and thanks to your advice, and it's made such a difference. I've been doing it for about, I think I started writing and editing in August last year, and it's made such a massive, massive difference because now I don't dread that there is no second draft that's a tidy up. The second
yeah,
draft is a proper second draft where I've got notes for the second draft of Empress of the Trees, and I'm looking at character introductions, consistency, the kind of stuff that is a joy to look at and not a headache. So I would say that is the main way that I understand what works quicker than I did, and I've adapted my writing process to a way that works for me.
yeah. Hmm. Okay, so the next question is if you could swap places with a main character in any of your books, short stories, etc., who would you swap places with and why?
Interesting. So, English Hikikomori is basically me, but exaggerated, and I wouldn't like to go through that. So, I definitely wouldn't like to be any of the characters in that story. Um, Still Life is all about people with abilities, and it's actually about an immortal artist who traps women in paintings. And I think it's fairly safe to say that I wouldn't like to be him because although he is immortal and
Mm.
lived since Roman times, he's also done some unspeakably unpleasant things over those centuries. So I definitely wouldn't like to be him.
So there's nobody that you would like to put in a painting then.
Yeah, but oh well, no, don't get me started on that. Good points. Yes, there are several Tesco store managers over the years. I used to be an employee of Tesco. Several Tesco store managers. That would be absolutely marvelous. But no, we won't go there. So I think the best answer for this in Empress of the Trees. Again, the problem I've got is that my characters are either bad guys, and when they're bad, I don't really do a bit nasty. I do horrible monsters
Yeah.
basically.
When
So
they're bad to the bone, basically.
yeah, I wouldn't like to be any of those. And unfortunately, I'm rather cruel to my main characters. So if they're not horrible monsters, they're having a horrible time perpetrated by the horrible monsters. I think the closest to a character that I could cope with being with is Adrian Vickers from Empress of the Trees. And the reason is he's a good guy, he's a nice guy, he gets the girl at the end. And he's not a monster. He's driven by wanting to do the right thing. And he is the only person in his unit in the army, because he's a soldier, which I could never be, by the way. He's the only person in his unit that fully obeys his orders,
Mm.
even though it puts his life in danger. Whereas everybody else in his unit accepts that the orders, basically his orders were that these orders we're about to give you cannot be countermanded. If a new government takes over in the future, you have to stick to what we've told you to do now. He is the only one in the unit that does that. All the others, for self-preservation reasons, switch allegiance when they're told to. So he's very honourable, he's very brave, and he's got a very pretty girlfriend.
Fair enough. Um, so you're going to be doing a reading for us today. Can you tell us a little bit about the plot of the book you read it from and your inspiration for it?
Okay, so the story is called Empress of the Trees. I'm still not totally happy with the title, but I haven't come up with anything better. And it all started, I can be so precise with this. On Monday, the 29th of January, 2019, at
Oh.
4:30, I was driving into work to do a flight to Singapore. Now, these days I listen to the radio. Sorry, these days I listen to music in the car, but in those days I listened to Radio 4 a lot. And at 4:30, a program came on the radio called Beyond Belief, and it's all about it's not a religious program per se, but it's about the way religion shapes and does things. And the program was about trees.
Mm.
And they talked in it about forest churches, so how certain religions have kind of tried to move away from being indoors and doing outdoor services and stuff connecting with nature. It's not specifically paganism, but it's Christianity that's kind of more inspired by paganism, probably the best way to say it. It talks about how trees talk to each other using roots, mycelia, sort of fungal system between the roots. They literally use it to talk to each other and help trees of the same species. There was loads in this program, and if you listen to the program, it's still up there on BBC Sounds. You will literally see where it came from, because everything that everything, not everything, but nearly everything that's talked about in that program kind of makes its way into the narrative of my book. And my book basically is, what if the trees on the planet are a lot more intelligent than we realize? What if they are talking to each other? And what if the conversation they're having is something like this? Those humans are really mucking up our atmosphere. Let's give them an ultimatum. Sort it out, humanity, or we'll stop breathing for 2 years. We'll survive. You won't. And that's what it's about. It's, as I said, it's kind of an ecological thriller. It was inspired purely by listening to that program. As a result of that, because that was in July, I chose to start writing on the 1st of November 2019 as part of National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, which gave me 3 months to do some research. So I bought loads of books. I bought books on the history of trees in religion. I bought a book called The Secret Life of Trees. I even brought a book called The Dream of the Rood, which I haven't incorporated so far, but it's basically a poem written from the point of view of the tree that was harvested to make the cross that Christ was crucified on.
Mm.
And it's written from the point of view of the tree.
Yeah.
I thought was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
So there are possibilities with it, and I haven't actually incorporated that. I was going to. The closest thing I've done to incorporating it is one of my tree characters is named after the supposedly human writer of that poem, Wolf. So yeah. And I've deliberately included loads of references from other religions and
Mm.
mythologies. The idea being, I suppose, that they are real terms that the trees used, and different religions and mythologies have picked them up over the years and incorporated them into what they do.
Yeah. Yes. And here is your reading from, what's it called again? Sorry, the
It's
book.
called Empress of the Trees, and what you're about to hear is the moment that a person called Ronnie, she's I think an 18-year-old girl, she's been created by the trees to be an ambassador for them. But at this point in her life, she knows nothing about that. She knows she was a foundling. She knows she's adopted. She knows that we don't really know who her parents were. And she's unaccountably started behaving strangely. So she's got exceedingly protective of a friend of hers. She doesn't know why. She's also put on an absolute ton of weight. She's gone from being a skinny girl into a rich, she's, big boned would be the polite way of putting it. She's put on a lot of weight very quickly, doesn't understand why. And this excerpt literally comes from the moment after she's spent the night basically with this friend of hers that she's found she's overprotective of.
It is time. Come to me now. Ronnie's eyes snapped open. She looked at the alarm clock on Danny's bedside table. It was 4:30 in the morning. The glasses of Carver sat on top of the fridge, untouched. Danny was snuggled up to her. She kissed the top of his forehead, then sat bolt upright. There was a voice talking in her head. It sounded like the deep voice she'd heard on Christmas Day when she had touched the tree. Now, it was saying, you must come to me, now. She carefully stepped out of the bed. Danny grunted, but did not wake up. She felt an overwhelming urge to just run to the forest and had to stop herself from doing so. She put her clothes on and wanted to give Danny a further kiss, but the urgency within her drew her away. Her feet tried to walk straight outside, but she managed to take some control and walked into her room, took her coat and her keys to the bike room. She walked quickly to the exit and went down the stairs to the bike store, opened it and unlocked her bike. Such was her sense of hurry that she did not reattach the D-lock to her bike. She left the 2 parts of it on the floor, complete with her keys, and wheeled the bike up the 3 steps until she was outside. She neither closed nor locked the door behind her. As soon as she got onto the tarmac, Ronnie climbed on the bike and started pedalling. She could hear a rushing in her ears, and she knew that, for some reason, she had to get to her old yew tree as quickly as possible. She pedalled as fast as she could, using the gears on her bike to her best advantage, riding faster than she ever had. She could feel that her legs were exhausted, and she pushed herself through the pain barrier as her muscles filled with lactic acid. She screamed as she forced herself and the bicycle up a short hill, then down the other side. She had never managed this journey so quickly as she did tonight. There was no traffic on the roads, which was a good thing because she realised when she passed one of the rare street lamps that she had not put her lights on the bike and had been pedalling in the dark without them. She finally came to the turn for the car park and flung the bike into the undergrowth. She ran as fast as she could, her mind full of only one thought: getting to the tree. Finally, she made it and stood before the great yew in the moonlight. Tentatively, she touched the trunk with her bare hands. The same as last time, the trunk seemed sticky beneath her fingers, even though there had been no sign of sap or anything damp on the bark. Ronnie stood there with both hands on the tree and suddenly felt foolish. The moment her hands touched the bark, the desire to be with her tree vanished completely, so she tried to pull her hands away. But they were stuck. Panicking now, she screamed and tried violently to twist her hands away from the trunk, but all she managed to do was hurt her wrists. She looked at them and suddenly realised that they were not on the surface of the tree, they were inside it. The tree had absorbed her hands and was slowly dragging the rest of her body into itself. She screamed again. Ursula's house was not that far away, and it was a quiet night. "Ursula!" she screamed. "Mrs. Baker! Help me! Help!" Her frantic cries echoed through the night, but no help came. She looked down and saw that her arms had vanished almost to her elbows. She kicked at the tree, but that proved to be a mistake, as her shoe became impossibly wedged into the trunk, and she found her leg was being sucked in as well. She kept screaming and calling for help as the tree started to absorb her body, her head tilted back so that it would be the last thing to vanish. As her body and lungs went into the tree, she found that she could not breathe, and her screams became silent as there was no breath to affect them. Finally, with her eyes rolling in panic, the tree absorbed her head, and a hush fell over the forest.
Thank you very much for that, Richard. And so, moving on from that, what are you currently working on?
So I've finished the first draft of Empress of the Trees now, and I'm actually revisiting a story that I'm really proud of called Still Life, and I'm working on what is hopefully the final draft. So it's the fifth draft, and it's basically being used to just slightly improve. I don't think it was very far from being finished with the fourth draft. But well, you were one of my
Yeah,
readers on this one, and you gave me some very good feedback. So, for example, the opening chapter is set in 1915, and this young couple have just got engaged before he's about to go off to the trenches and fight in the war. And you kind of pointed out to me, well, actually, in the real world, they probably would have got married
yeah,
because she would get a widow's pension
yeah,
if anything happened to him. And it kind of made me think because it doesn't change the story one iota, but it made a lot more sense.
mm,
So little things like that. There were some moments where trying to think, there was two characters in particular that you felt just accepted weird events
yeah.
far too
You're
easily.
like, okay, then, no, you say it's happening, right?
Oh,
Okay, we'll go
oh,
with
oh,
that.
I can telepathically communicate with everybody. Cool.
Yeah.
So I've just changed it and made them a lot more cynical. And obviously they have to accept what's happening because it's key to the story. But no, I'm very proud of it. So the story is about an immortal artist who he's been around since Roman times, and he traps people in paintings, mainly women, not exclusively women, but mainly women. And it's all about my central character is he has I don't really use the word magical powers. I use
Okay.
the word abilities, but they are kind of like magical powers in the story. He has been able to artificially elongate his life. He's the one who trained himself to trap people in the paintings. And the story is about a modern day. Well, I think I've said it in 2018, actually. That's when I started writing it. And it's about a modern day young lady who finds she's got these powers. She's recruited by the people that effectively regulate these powers to make sure nobody abuses them,
Yeah.
like artist did, because they believe he died. They believe they executed him in 1897. But he's so powerful. Actually, what happened was he put the image of his execution into their heads, and they all believed it. And then he went and hid. And he's
Yeah.
kind of after nearly 100, no, more than 100 years, so 121 years after that happened, he's finally kind of resurfaced. He's been a little bit less careful, and
More arrogant.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And they're onto him, and the person he latches onto is my main character because she's newly discovered she's got these abilities, and they sort of meet, and their minds accidentally touch, and yeah. So it's about basically this monster being dealt with by somebody who's new to this world of abilities.
And so you're going through just the final edits on that then for sort of to hope to sort of do something with it afterwards, or
Yeah, I mean, I'm the English hikikomori. I'm in the process of receiving rejections from from people about it. I do honestly think, and I'm not saying it will sell because that'd be very arrogant, but I think if I put English hikikomori and Still Life next to each other, Still Life has a better chance of getting an agent interested. I still think it's very unlikely that will happen. But so yeah, when it's finished, I will then start sending it off to agencies because I'm still going to continue submitting the English hikikomori. But
yeah.
I think it's a different. Still Life is a different genre. It'll have a different audience. I think it's a better book, if I'm totally honest. So yes, that is what I will do. And also, I do actually. I'm editing it live on Twitch TV at the moment, so I'm sure at some point my social media will be shared on here.
Yeah.
All of that information, you can watch me editing it, get the gist of the story on Twitch. You can either watch it live or you can watch, effectively they're available as catch-up videos. I do put them on YouTube for the first month or two after I've done them as well. So yeah.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people don't realise there is actually an emerging writing community on Twitch TV, and actually they've now got a writing and reading category, haven't they? Because it used to have to be just like writers, but
Yeah.
now it's actually
Yeah.
writing and reading category. And like I say, people watch to like write along to also get. Also, I know a lot of people come in and ask your opinion about their own writing projects and tell you
Yeah.
about their own writing projects, and you do have a Discord voice channel, don't you? So people can actually come in
Yeah.
and talk to you live if they want to as well.
Yeah, and a couple
Um,
of people have done that. I mean, I asked you
just
but
test out the equipment.
absolutely, but you're not the only person. It's happened a couple of times, which is really nice. And yeah, I mean, I could write much quicker if I didn't do it on Twitch.
Yeah.
I actually enjoy the chatting with other people. You know, I've got a handful of people. Unfortunately, I don't do it regularly. So when I'm writing, I've got to the point where I prefer writing in a coffee shop and I can't stream from a coffee shop. So what I've got to the point now is I tend to only put the editing bits onto Twitch, which means it's as and when I'm ready to edit. So it's a little more ad hoc than it used to be. But I have got a core audience, people that, you know, that always pop in. I mean, you've been on there yourself. You see, I regularly get, I'm not going to name names on here, but there are certain people that regularly drop in, and it's good fun. I enjoy it.
Right, so moving on from Into the Trees, you've also got a sort of a series of short stories called 60/40, which was to mark the 60th and 40th anniversary of Doctor Who and the Bill, respectively. So each story combines the universes of Doctor Who and the Bill in a variety of interesting and unique ways. So as a bit of fun, I'm now going to test you with 10 questions about Doctor Who and the Bill. Okay. Are you ready for this?
I am. I will contextualise. So Doctor Who has been a passion of mine. I've loved it since I was a kid. I literally remember hiding behind the sofa during a 1979 story set in Paris. It was called City of Death, and it's actually hilarious. It's written by Douglas Adams. It's funny, not scary, but as a kid, it terrified me. And then the Bill is something I always liked when it was on, but only watched the first few years. And then during the pandemic, one of the British streamers put the entire back catalogue on, all 2,400 and whatever it is. I think it's 23 episodes of it, and I binged watched a lot over a couple of years, and I really like it. It went through phases. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but at core it's a very, very good police procedural show, and I really enjoy it. But anyway, that's the context. Sorry.
That's all right. Yeah. So, they start off quite easy, so you should be able to. So, this is basically like, so you've got like, you know, rather than combining the two shows in one question, it's like one question about, Right, so what year did the first episode of The Bill air?
Right, there's two answers for this. So the first episode of The Bill, titled The Bill, transmitted in 1984. However, the pilot, which wasn't called The Bill, it was called Wooden Top, transmitted in 1983.
Okay, well, I'll give you that. I had 1983 down, but so we'll give you that. A bit of extra information there, so we're going to give you I'll give you a bonus point for that.
Fabulous.
Extra information.
Happy with that.
Okay, so so what year did the first episode of Doctor Who air?
I can tell you the date. So it was the 23rd of November in 1963. It was the day after President Kennedy was assassinated, and as a result of the continuing news coverage, it was broadcast late and almost nobody watched it. So they took the unusual step the following week of repeating episode 1 immediately before episode 2.
There you go, a bit more
the bonus point there, clearly.
Yeah. Right, so this one is a bit of a meme that sort of started between us, so just a sort of a connection to that. So who played Chief Inspector Derek Conway in The Bill?
Oh no, I do know the guy's name because he died a couple of years ago, and he's an amazing actor, and it's not going to come back. Oh, Derek, no. I the moment you say it, I'm going to go, of course it is. I can't remember. Ben Roberts. I love Ben Roberts. He's such a funny guy. I mean, you actually listen to him interviewed around the show, and his performance. I mean, he's a serious character, but he's funny. His comic timing is beautiful. Because he's basically the chief inspector of the police station, and his boss is Brownlow, the chief superintendent, and he hates him, and he can't hide it. So his expression when they're just having a conversation, if Brownlow is speaking, look at Conway.
Yeah, the reason why it's a bit of a meme is because obviously one of my characters in the Both Sides series is Inspector John Conway, and you like to think that Derek Conway is in some way a descendant of...
Yes. Absolutely. In fact, at one point when I write a 60/40 story in the future, I'm not going to mention your character by name, but I am going to say that that Conway has a relative that was in the police force in the 1890s or whatever. When did he start?
1860 something.
I'll find out exactly.
Yeah, his day after his 70th birthday. Yeah. So
I won't name the character, but I will hint that the Conway from The Bill has definitely had an ancestor. in the police in the past.
Yeah, because even though my character's not actually had any kids yet.
Well, it could be his brother. It could be another family member. Obviously, it's got to be someone that keeps the name, so it's got to be the male side of the family.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Ben Roberts. It was so sad. He's apparently such a nice guy as well. So
yeah. Okay, so leading on from that, it's a similar question. So, who played the character of Conway in Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD from 1966, starring Peter Cushing?
Oh, Peter Cushing.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate those movies.
I only asked it because it had the Conway character.
That's interesting because there wasn't a character. So the Dalek Invasion of Earth, the movie, is based on the television series.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty certain there wasn't a Conway in the television version. So now I'm racking my brains trying to think.
I think it was quite an obscure character in the film. I don't think he had a major part. I think he was
he definitely didn't. I mean, the most major guest role actually is, I can't remember the actor's name, but do you remember the episode of Dad's Army where the Germans take over and there's the famous line, "Don't tell him, Pike." You know that one?
Yeah.
German officer, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he's a brilliant actor. He's been in Doctor Who loads of times, but he's in that movie, and it's about the only good thing about that movie. But no, I couldn't tell you. So yes,
I would have been amazed if you'd got that.
No.
So so that's Keith Marsh. Yeah, I got no idea. Okay, so right, you've already sort of kind of asked this. But I need an actual definite answer for this. How many official episodes of The Bill were there before the series ceased broadcasting on the 31st of August 2010? I'll give you within 5 of the total.
Do you include Wooden Top? Mind you, it's within 5, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The answer I've got in my head, and I don't know if it's accurate, is 2,423. But does that include the spin-offs? So they did 12 episodes of a series called MIT, Murder Investigation Team. They did 6 episodes of a spin-off called Burnside.
Well, this is not including the spin-offs. This is just the main core.
I don't know, but I'm going to say 2,423.
I'll give that to you because it's 2,425.
I'll have that.
So it was within 5. So the next one is, as of 25th of December 2024, how many official episodes of Doctor Who have there been?
Oh, I haven't a clue. I know there were 695 of the original series between 1963 and 1989. And unless you've got time here, I could sit here and work it out using my... Is it within 5?
I'll give you within 100 on this one.
Within 100? Oh, that should be quite easy. So 695 of the original series. We've had nearly 200 of the new. I'm going to say 800.
800?
No, more than that. I've just remembered.
Remember, it's within 100, so...
The episode, it says 800 and something episodes ago, and then there's a flashback. I'm going to say 895.
I'll give that to you, because it's 884.
That's not... Oh, yes, I forgot about the new series.
Yeah.
I mean, oh, yeah, okay, cool.
Okay, this next one, I would be astounded if you get this one. Okay. This is proper, like, super fan territory now.
I won't get it then.
What was the postal code for Sun Hill Police Station in the Bill?
I know it was on screen, but I couldn't tell you what it was. That's excellent. That's an awesome question. It's meant to be in the East End, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, was it E? I don't know, because I've got this vague memory that it might hit Walford. Is it E20 something? I don't know.
It's E1 4KM.
E1 4KM. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's okay, right.
Because Sun Hill is a fictional sort of part.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a bit of a funny question, really. So, what is the postal code for the Doctor's TARDIS?
It doesn't have a postal.
Yeah.
I
did think that that would be your immediate answer. I think some people are thinking, wait a minute, was there one? No, there wasn't one. No, hasn't got one. That was a bit of an easy answer.
I mean, for about 10 years. about 10 years in the 70s, it would have been whatever the postal code was for the unit headquarters. But
Yeah.
as for itself, yeah, I'd be very surprised if it did. But then it also wouldn't have surprised me if there'd been an episode where something was addressed to the TARDIS and there was a screen capture with an envelope with a postcode on it. So
Yeah.
it could have existed. You never know. I'm glad it.
Yeah. Okay, so question 9. Who was the longest serving character to appear in the finale of The Bill? So it had to appear in the finale, so not necessarily the longest ever serving, but they had to appear in the last episode.
So that would be DCI. Well, actually, he was Detective Superintendent by then, Jack Meadows.
Yep. So bonus point if you can tell me who played him.
Oh, goodness, he was in Doctor Who as well. He's one of those few actors. If you'd done some crossover Doctor Who questions, because I was hoping you'd ask me which lead cast members of the bill had been in Doctor Who and which lead cast...
that's too in depth.
I could have answered that, though. What's his name? I can't remember. But he's, he was in a Doctor Who story called Kinder in 1980. And the other guest actor in that story was the guy who played Reg Hollis.
Oh, yes, it's Simon Rouse. Simon Rouse,
of course it was.
Yeah. I'll give you a bonus point because you had his rank. So,
Yeah.
So, which of the Doctor's companions has appeared in the most episodes?
That would be Fraser Hines playing James Robert McCrimmon. Mainly because he did it for 3 years, but in those days they did 40 episodes a year.
So how many episodes would you think he was in? Bonus point.
I could probably work. So he was in. Again, it's not going to be exact, but they were roughly 43 to 45 a year. So we say 44, so 132. But he didn't appear in the first 8, 15. So I'm going to say 117.
You're very close. 113.
Something like that. Yeah.
I'll give you that.
Did that include when he reappeared later on?
I've just got
initial run.
1966 to 1985. I've got it down here.
Okay, yes. So 1985 included. He did 3 episodes in the 80s, and he also appeared in the 20th anniversary Christmas special in 1983 as well. So that will be 4 of the episodes. So okay.
Yeah, so you got 11 out of 10.
Excellent. I'm happy with that.
Oh my
Ben
god.
not knowing the key names of certain actors in the bill. Ben Roberts and Simon Rouse. Ben Roberts was allegedly in Doctor Who as well, but I've never seen him. So he is listed as appearing as an extra in a 1982 story called Resurrection of the Daleks. And I'm guessing he was a soldier because they were mainly the only people that were extras on that episode. And I can't find him.
I think I possibly didn't go that in depth. I thought that's the sort of thing you probably would know. So I was trying to do a bit ones that were a bit more on the edge really. It's basically, if you want to know something, got any questions about the Bill and Doctor Who, then this is the person to come to on this Twitch channel.
Just not actors' names, clearly.
Yeah. So moving on from that, so where do you see your writer's journey in a year's time?
Right. Well, I'm hoping. So in the last few months, I've managed to find a consistency in my writing, which I don't think was there before, in terms of just the pure mechanics of making myself knuckle down
The motivation,
yeah. So in terms of projects, I hope to have signed off Still Life, and I hope to be working on a future draft of Empress of the Trees. I will continue to send things to agents. I've not totally shut off the idea of self-publishing. My issue with self-publishing is I know how much effort it is to get yourself out there. I mean, I look at, and I'm absolutely genuinely full of admiration for you and what you've managed to achieve with the Bow Street Society and the number of people that are into it. The fact that you do get to do these panels and events and stuff. And I actually came with you to one.
Yeah. Dark Side of Brighton,
which I genuinely enjoyed. But I couldn't see myself doing it. I enjoyed being an audience member. And it's weird because you'll admit yourself, you get nervous when sitting in an audience talking about it. And it doesn't bother me in the slightest. I could do it. You can see me now. I just won't stop. You get bits of me out, so we run to time, I expect. But yeah. And yet, even though it wouldn't bother me to do, it's not something I'm especially interested in doing. And
I think you would enjoy the people interaction and the talking to people and engaging with readers. But I think, like you said, I think it's the actual behind the scenes marketing, making those connections, and sort of more the laborious side of things, really, and just having to do the boring bit of admin and that sort of thing. It can be quite a bit of a slog, really. And obviously, it does take time to build up those connections in
Yeah,
order to get to
absolutely.
the position where you can be on those. But I think the actual doing the panels themselves, I think you would be really good at.
I'd probably enjoy it, to be fair, but like you say, it's the other stuff. It's the getting to that point that, and I'll never say never. So it's very hard to answer where I'll be in a year's time. Hopefully, still in a good place where I'm
Still
writing.
writing, yeah.
Yeah.
So, last question already. I can't believe it's the last question already. If you were to have coffee with three people, living or dead, who would you choose? Why would you choose them? And what would you talk about? Now, bearing in mind, it doesn't have to be famous people. It could be anybody that you've ever known.
Okay. Or I've heard of, presumably.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay. So the first one, I think we both knew, or we both know, that there would be a Doctor Who actor in there somewhere.
yeah.
Did you anticipate that might be the case? So let's get the obvious one out of the way first. Now, I really struggle with this, believe it or not, because there's so many interesting actors who've played Doctor Who over the years. And I had it down to two in the end, either Patrick Troughton, who played the second Doctor Who,
Right.
or Peter Capaldi, who played the 12th. And my notes say one thing, and I'm now going to change it to talk to you about it. So I was going to say Peter Capaldi, because I think he's a great actor. I think he brings a gravitas to it, which even the script isn't where it should be. He can make it seem serious and good. So I was going to go for him, but I've actually changed my mind at the last minute. I'm going to say Patrick Troughton. So Patrick Troughton sadly died, I think it was in 1987, but he was the second Doctor and arguably the most important Doctor, because if that change hadn't worked,
Yeah.
it would have gone. The series would have been dead. You know, if people resisted William Hartnell becoming Patrick Troughton,
Yeah.
then there would probably be DVDs of the original series, because the BBC like to monetize everything now, but we wouldn't still be talking about it as a show that runs now 60 years later, thanks to that man. And he played the part absolutely brilliantly. He was funny. Matt Smith, who played the 11th Doctor, said he reviewed a lot of the early tapes to get an idea who this man was. And he absolutely based his performance on Troughton's, and you can see it, and it's brilliant because of it. He was apparently a very humble, very, very nice man. Really, yeah, and I can't believe, because all my notes say Peter Capaldi. He was apparently a very humble, very, very nice, very interesting man. And obviously, I'd want to talk about not just Doctor Who, but his whole career. I mean, he had a very interesting life.
Oh yeah.
He wasn't a paragon of virtue.
I think let me say a side on look at it like, oh yeah, you know.
Well, he had a second family that his first family knew
Ooh,
nothing about.
scandal.
Yeah. Oh no, I mean it's all out in the open now.
Oh no,
But
yeah, but yeah, juicy
absolutely.
details.
So he had a second family. So there were two groups of kids watching the telly, going, "Oh, my daddy's Doctor Who." And it's like, ow! And in this day and age, that literally wouldn't be possible because of
No,
technology and
yeah,
phone.
social media, yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that, the paparazzi would have followed him around if they had a mere hint that this was going on, but he managed it. But no, so definitely Patrick Troughton. And I'm not like bigging up what he did, because actually it's quite bad, really. But a different age, brilliant actor, bit of a method actor, apparently. He's done so many other things, and he comes across as so different. So one of my other favourite roles of his was in a kids TV show called The Box of Delights. And he's magical in it. He's absolutely wonderful, and nothing like Doctor Who. And his family, his sons are acting, his grandsons are acting. Have you seen the Harry Potter films?
Some of them, yeah.
So Harry Potter's has well, he's not really his brother, but the family he lives with have a son called Dudley.
Yeah.
Dudley, or the actor who plays him, is a Troughton offspring.
Oh.
And he is actually it's I don't know which side of the family he was from, but or which family he was from. But yeah, so no, absolutely fascinating. So yeah, there you go. So I winged that, having made all my notes about Peter Capaldi.
Yeah. And who's the other two people?
So the next one, this probably won't come as a surprise either. I love my music, and I'm a huge Pet Shop Boys fan. So can you guess who I'm going to say?
The Pet Shop Boys?
Well, one of them. There are two, and I did agonise about it. Because unless I can have the Pet Shop Boys as one person, but that's probably cheating.
I can let you have the Pet Shop Boys as one person.
Lovely, great. I'll have Neil Tennant and Chris Lowe then. Thank you. The pair of them, I've read. There's a music journalist called Chris Heath, and he's written books about, like, he's done books about Robbie Williams, Madonna, Pet Shop Boys, and he actually followed them around on one of their early tours. And his exact words were, "These guys bicker like experts." And they can have a conversation about stuff without getting nasty, have
Yeah.
a completely different point of view. They're so funny when you hear them talk. And I think what's lovely about Pet Shop Boys is it really is a collaboration. So people tend to think, well, Neil does the lyrics and Chris does the music, and it isn't as simple as that. I remember reading an interview with Boy George, and they recorded a song with him for a movie called The Crying Game.
Right.
He and Boy George recorded the theme song, which is a
Yeah.
song of The Crying Game for that movie. And he was actually sitting down with Neil, and Neil was playing it on the piano. And Boy George was like, "Oh, well, actually, no, I need the notes. It needs to be higher up. That key that you're playing that in isn't right for my voice." And he assumed that would be a problem. But Neil is such a talented musician, he just went, "Okay," and just played it in a different key with the sheet music in front of him, which a lot
Yeah.
of people assume Chris could do, but not Neil.
Yeah.
And I love the guy's lyrics as well. I'm not going to repeat them because I'll end up blubbing. But there is a song he wrote, which is a B-side, and it's called Your Funny Uncle. And it's all about the funeral of somebody who died as a result of the AIDS epidemic. And it's all about what happens when the boyfriend turns up at the
Yeah.
funeral. And it's beautifully written. It's sad. He writes poems, and then they put
Yeah.
electronic beats to it, basically. And I'm not saying all of his songs are that good, or all his lyrics are that good, but the good ones are bloody superb. I'd love to talk to him. He's a very educated man. I'd love to talk to him about his music. I'd love to talk to him about his musical inspiration. And also, interestingly, David Tennant, the
Yeah.
actor. Do you know why David Tennant is called David Tennant?
No.
So his real name is David MacDonald. But there is already a David MacDonald in what's the union called for
Oh, the Actors Union.
the
Yeah.
actors union, whatever
Yeah.
it's called.
Yeah.
There was already a David MacDonald, so he couldn't use that name. So he was flicking through Smash Hits, and at that point Neil Tennant was the editor of Smash Hits. So he goes, "Oh, well, that's a good name, David Tennant." So David Tennant is literally named himself after Neil Tennant from the Pet Shop, and he's proud of it. He thinks they're great.
Yeah.
So
So,
yeah,
out of curiosity, if you had to have picked one of the two, who would you have picked?
probably Neil, because, as I say, it's the lyrics that I'm
Yeah.
absolutely fascinated by, and that's the person I've got in my notes. But being able to have them both is very generous. Do they have to squeeze it onto one chair, or can we have an extra chair?
They could have a bench.
Bench. Oh, I'm hoping it's a padded one. There
Yeah.
needs
Oh,
to
yeah.
be,
Nice little booth. Yeah, they could have one side of the booth, and then you and
okay,
the other two people can sit on the
yeah.
other side of the booth. Yeah.
And there
So,
needs to be lots of champagne. I'm not saying Neil's a lush, but
where's the coffee? It's coffee, so they're gonna have to make do with that. But yeah.
uh, oh, I'm sure I'll get him talking.
So the third person.
This one's my favourite, and will probably will it'll well, where I got the name from won't surprise you, but then when I talk about what they've done in their career, it probably will. So I'm going to choose a female British television producer called Verity Lambert. Have you heard
Oh,
of it?
yes. Yes. I have heard about them, but yeah.
What do you know about Verity Lambert?
I know she was involved in the early stuff with Midsomer Murders and that sort
Yep,
of thing. Yeah.
loads of stuff. So
Yeah.
basically, she used to work for a guy called, the name will come back to me, Sidney Newman,
Mm.
at one of the ITV franchises in the early 60s. And he was poached by the BBC because they felt they needed someone with an eye to drawing in ratings, because basically ITV were getting better ratings than the BBC. So he moved across, and he's the person who created things like Doctor Who and stuff like that. And he arguably did a fantastic job. And one of the people he brought across with him was a young lady called Verity Lambert. And she'd never been a TV producer before, but he gave her the job. So he was worried that there was basically a gap between the end of the sports coverage and the news, where all the ratings were going to ITV. And he
Yeah.
wanted a short 25-minute drama with an interesting hook to go in that time slot. And that's where Doctor Who came from. And he made her the very first producer of Doctor Who. Now, this was unprecedented. Doctor Who always has been groundbreaking. Everybody calls it like a woke show. It had the first female producer on any television show in the world. Of course, everybody talked about it. They all said she was sleeping with Sidney Newman. That's the only reason she got the job.
Oh, yeah.
And this isn't me being nasty. I've
Yeah, but
read
that's still a charge that females are still given nowadays, isn't it? Any hint of success, they're always, oh, you must have slept with somebody.
Yeah. And so yeah, she really knew her stuff. I mean, she cast Doctor Who, and she definitely got it right because we're still talking about it 60 years on. And it was also, so the first director was a gay Asian gentleman, which, like, again, 1963, what? So I want to talk briefly about her career and why I find her so fascinating. So obviously she did the stuff with the BBC. She did a couple of other bits and pieces for the BBC. And then she moved over to ITV.
Mm.
And have you heard of Rumpole of the Bailey?
Yes, I've seen a few episodes of that. Yeah,
Right, so Rumpole of the Bailey actually started life as a one-off BBC play in
I
1975.
can believe that. Yeah, yeah,
One-off, it was very, very popular. Everybody loved it. They made one. It was meant to be like a drama of the week. And
yeah,
it was Verity Lambert who basically said, when she worked for ITV, this was brilliant, but it should be a series. So she single-handedly campaigned, got the rights from the BBC, got the original writers on board who wrote the original TV play. You know, they'd already cast it, so they retained the cast from the BBC.
yeah, yeah.
And it ran for 7 years between 7 series between 1978 and 1992. And it was arguably one of the most popular courtroom dramas, certainly in the 80s. It kind
Yeah.
of fell off a bit at the end. And she was responsible for that. She's been responsible for two soap operas in her life. One which nobody's heard of called The Newcomers, which she launched on the BBC in the 60s. I think it was her first project after Doctor Who, actually. It ran for 4 years. It was okay. And then the other one is now notorious for how it failed and how bad it was, which was a 1992 effort called El Dorado,
Oh, yeah.
which was the BBC trying to. So basically, the BBC used to have EastEnders on a Tuesday and a Thursday. And Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in the same slot was Terry Wogan. He had a chat show. And they decided that he'd been on doing that for years and years. Well, probably about 7 or 8 years. And they decided, nah, we want something more interesting. So they created a new soap opera to fill the nights between EastEnders. Now, arguably, EastEnders was very popular at that point. They should have given the EastEnders 3 a week and just started 2 a week on El Dorado. And it got rushed. The production got told, right, you've got to start now when we're supposed to be starting 2 months down the line. They got young actors who weren't that good.
Yeah.
The proviso that we're not going to give you any major storylines until you settled in. And then literally one of them was the focus for the first 30 episodes. She wasn't very good, not her own fault. She wasn't ready for that kind of role. And of course, particularly the tabloid press absolutely tore into her. It got cancelled. It wasn't a pretty story. But I would argue that's her only failure. And even that was a very high profile, notorious failure. And there are some people even now who think that show should have continued. When she was head of drama for Thames Television, she produced The Naked Civil Servant. I don't know if you've heard of that. So it
Yeah,
was John.
yeah, yeah.
So it was a 1975 biographical comedy about Quentin Crisp, starring
Yeah.
a young up and coming actor called
I can't remember.
John Hurt.
Oh yeah, John. Yeah, 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 yeah. I've seen
Yes.
documentaries about these programs. Obviously, I wasn't alive when they
Yeah, no,
first
no,
aired.
no. I was alive when it aired, but I was 3, so I doubt I watched
I
it.
love watching documentaries about the history of television and productions, that sort of thing. So I did know that, but yeah.
Yeah. So she also, again, there was another BBC show called Quatermass,
Yeah.
which she felt hadn't run its course. So she dragged that across to ITV, not with the original cast, but then BBC did it 3 times, and each time it had a different cast. So, it didn't really matter. She got the original writer and brought Quatermass to ITV. Then she created her own production company. And did things like there's a play which I do remember hearing about called A Cry in the Dark, which starred Sam Neill and Meryl Streep and was about the Dingo Baby, famous Dingo
Yeah,
Baby.
yeah.
1980. She did sitcoms, which I do remember, called May to December. Do you remember that one?
No.
Oh, so it's basically, I can't remember the name of the star of it, but basically it's about an older guy having a relationship with a younger woman, which was quite taboo in those days. She
Yeah.
did something called So Haunt Me. She was an executive producer on Alan Bleasdale's GBH, which is an absolute notorious bit of drama, starring Robert Lindsay, Michael Palin, Julie Walters. Absolutely phenomenal telly, won loads of awards. She was the first producer on Minder. Did you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So she was the first producer on Minder. And this, I found out whilst researching this to talk about it. She produced a television series that you like from season 2 of its run until the end. Any idea what? I'll give you a clue. Windmill.
Oh, Jonathan Creek.
She was the producer on Jonathan
I
Creek.
did think I was going to say at the beginning. I thought I saw in the opening credits. I've rewatched Jonathan Creek loads, but yeah.
Absolutely. So she had a phenomenal career. She was an exceedingly talented woman. She was Jewish, which again, in those days did hold you back.
Yeah.
She's amazing. And there is so much I'd want to talk. And I guess because she's no longer with us, she died in 2007, I get to choose which iteration of her I would like to talk to. And I think I would want it to be a version of her from the later end of her life, because of the amount of stuff she'd done that I could talk to her about. I mean, she really was a television pioneer. I don't think people understand quite how amazing and influential she was. And so I've read this wonderful biography about her. And yeah, so she would be the most obscure one. But then anybody interested in television would absolutely know who she was.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting combination of those three sort of, well, technically four, but yeah, people. But yeah, I think that would be quite. I think you would be talking well into the night. I think.
Yes,
coffee.
I think so.
Yeah. Oh, well, we've come to the end already. Oh no. Yeah, so just to remind people, I write the British Society books. You can go to BritishSociety.com to find out more about the books and the characters. Also, they're all available on Amazon, Kindle and ebook, and same thing, ebook and paperback. Also Kindle Limited. Just search British Society TG Campbell. And Richard, would like to just tell people where they can watch you and where they can follow you.
Yeah, so the best place to do would be to go to Linktree and search for RichardWrites, capital R, capital W. That has a list of all my social media, my Twitch channel. It's got links to my podcast on both Apple Music and Spotify. I say Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky. I have come off X now, unfortunately. But all of my other social media are on there. So you can listen to the podcast, you can watch the Twitch streams, and all on there.
You also do your podcast on YouTube as well. So if the people say can't afford to subscribe to Spotify, or they can also go onto YouTube to watch your podcast as well.
It is free on Spotify, but yes, it's absolutely on. It's also on. It's on Amazon. I won't talk about that. But it is on Amazon podcasts. It's on Audible. All the free bits of that. So it's in a lot. If you basically search for the Diary of a Wannabe Writer, it'll initially thinking you're looking for the Diary of a CEO and put you onto that guy from Dragon's Den. But once you get past the Diary of and type in the W, I think you'll probably find me.
I always end up accidentally putting in dairy rather than diary. So
Diary of a Wannabe Writer. Here's my cheese.
That's just me typing. But yeah, thank you very much for chatting with me today. It's been really interesting.
Thank you.